Tonight, our final debate before next week's election. While Republicans have dominated races for the State House and State Senate in the past, this year Democrats are contesting just about every race, including House District 71. It is an open seat and a battle between two well-known attorneys, Republican Will Robinson and Democrat Tracy Pratt. We welcome you both to the trapezoid. You're each going to get a minute for opening statements, and Tracy, by the luck of a coin flip, you get to go first.
Thanks so much, Alan, and thanks, Will, for being here, and thanks to the viewers for turning in. This is exciting. I have to say I've never been on live television before, so I appreciate this. I'm a mom and I'm a local attorney, and my husband and I have been married for 15 years, and we have two kids, aged 10 and 12. And I've been involved in community service for a very long time, and so I decided to run to protect Florida's future for my children and for everyone else's. I think the environment is really the most important issue that we're addressing right now. We need to make sure that our water is healthy, that our health is protected, that our quality of life is protected. I also believe that we need to protect our public schools. We've taken $1 billion out of public schools and put them into private schools and for-profit charters. I want to end the epidemic of gun violence with common sense gun reform, and I believe everyone deserves access to affordable health care. So those are the reasons that I'm running.
All right, Tracy, thank you very much. Will.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Tracy, and to the viewers of APC. My name is Will Robinson, and over the course of the campaign, I've been asked one question the most: why are you running? And for me, the answer is simple: to keep Florida moving forward. Because think back where we were as a state and a region 8 short years ago. Unemployment was double digits. Most people's homes were underwater. Our state debt was out of control. I never want to see us go back to those dark Florida days, because it's personal to me. I was born right up the road in Bradenton, just like my dad was. We were actually born in the very same hospital. My grandparents moved here in 1948 from Pikeville, Kentucky, to escape coal country. And they opened up a motel right on Tamiami Trail. And they came down here to realize the Florida dream. And that's what I want for everyone, to realize the Florida dream as we move Florida forward. Thank you all.
Okay, very good. We have to take a quick break, and when we come back, the candidates debate. So stick around. Welcome back to the House 71 debate. We're joined by Republican Will Robinson and Democrat Tracy Pratt. I'm going to start the debate this way, just like I did last night, because we're still reeling from what happened in Pittsburgh at a synagogue, 11 dead. And once again, the weapon of choice was an AR-15, the same weapon that was used at Parkland, in Orlando, Las Vegas, Sandy Hook. We could go on and on. And Tracy, I'm asking candidates now, why are these weapons, these assault-style weapons, which large capacity magazines legal in the state of Florida, would you vote to make them illegal?
Oh, absolutely. I announced my candidacy at the March for Our Lives, and I came out and I said I want to see a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. I do not believe that these essentially weapons of mass destruction that can kill people in seconds need to be in the hands of civilians.
Well, first of all, my deepest thoughts and prayers with the victims. I read it. It's the greatest mass casualty anti-Semitic issue in our country's history. And I was actually watching the Nuremberg trials, History Channel episode a week ago. And it is shocking to me that we have issues of racism in our country like this. That has no place in our country. With regard to banning, I disagree with my opponent. I think we have to focus on other issues, mental health, for instance. Banning a gun is not going to solve the problem. And frankly, some folks use that gun for self-defense. And we had a federal ban. We had a federal semi-assault weapons ban for 10 years, and it was ruled to be ineffective. So I don't think it solves the problem. It takes away law-abiding citizens' rights, and it doesn't solve the true issue, which is mental health.
Let me ask this follow-up question, because we've put a lot of emphasis here in Florida after Parkland in terms of having a police officer at every school. We have SROs, we have guardians. We're still working community by community in terms of what works best here. But the question is, if you just look at what happened in Pittsburgh, there were 3 police officers on duty when that alleged killer, went in there armed with not only an AR-15, but with several other weapons, and it did not stop police officers. So is just having a police officer or somebody armed at a school sufficient enough?
Well, it's an above all strategy. Certainly that's one component. Well, I'm a proud graduate of Manatee High School, and those days were different back in 1993. We had open campus. So certainly making sure our campuses have one entrance, one exit is vitally important. Mental health funding, vitally important. We talk about that a lot in society after every one of these shootings, and it never gets done. I'm very pleased that the legislature finally appropriated money. I'd like to see it recurring, because it was only for last budget cycle. So it's an above strategy that we have lots of things we need to accomplish, including more security.
Tracy.
Well, I mean, I agree with Will that the mental health funding was needed. I mean, I think we have had a dearth of resources in mental health funding across the state, but the reality is we need to keep more than our schools safe. We need to make sure our movie theaters and our places of worship and our restaurants and our music venues are safe. I mean, it's becoming too routine that we're seeing these absolutely atrocious headlines, and I think it leads to one conclusion. We know that the majority of people in America support universal background checks. We know that we can close the gun show loophole so that we can register these guns. And of course, like I said, we need to ban the assault weapons and the high-capacity magazines. The truth is, we don't know whether or not that ban actually helped, because there hasn't been enough research on it, because that hasn't been funded. But we know experts have come out to say that these common sense gun reform safety provisions can reduce gun violence in our communities.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. Our debate for House District 71 continues. Welcome back to the House 71 debate. We are joined by Republican Will Robertson and Democrat Tracy Pratt. And we were talking about the governor's race when we were in commercial. I want to talk about their education plans, because they both have radically different ideas in terms of how to improve education in Florida. Mayor Gillum wants to raise corporate taxes so teachers could get an increase in salary to $50,000. Mr. DeSantis wants to look for efficiencies and expand the voucher program in Florida. One of you two are going to be in the legislature in dealing with this. Well, let's take a look at Mayor Gillum's plan and what, in your opinion, is wrong with it.
Well, it moves Florida backwards. It doesn't move us forward. $1 billion tax increase, increasing our corporate tax rate equal to New York State. That's just not going to be good for job creators. They're going to flee the state. They're going to go to Texas with those jobs. I think it's a terrible idea. I like DeSantis' approach, which is to get more money into the classroom, which is where it belongs. So I like his approach to make sure we don't fund administration and we get the money into the classroom.
Tracy, that is what a lot of Republicans are saying, that nothing good could come of a corporate tax increase like that, especially after we worked so hard for so long in terms of restoring the economy here in Florida. Mm-hmm. So what do you say?
Well, I think we can't have failing public schools. I mean, we just cannot. And the truth is if we're going to attract good companies to our state, we have to have good, solid public schools. And we've taken, like I said before, $1 billion out of our public schools. We've put it into for-profit charter schools. We've put it into private school education that is not accountable to the taxpayer. I believe that our tax dollars should be going into schools that are accountable to us. I think we should have competitive salaries for teachers and for school personnel. I've been endorsed by the Manatee Teachers Association, and I'm really proud of that. I believe in a public school education. I think it's the bedrock of our society.
Let's ask you about the flip side. Congressman DeSantis' idea is to expand the voucher program. So if kids are going to failing schools, they have an option that they might not be able to afford on their own in terms of seeking a private school education. What's wrong with that?
Well, these schools shouldn't be failing to begin with. The truth is we should be putting the money back into it so it doesn't happen. And you know, I've been knocking on doors and I have met families with special needs kids who the public school isn't offering their kid what they need, and so they take a voucher and they go to a private school and they have to pay the difference. And these are hardworking, you know, lower income family members. You know, I've talked to other people who are concerned because they think their school is failing. They see the resources going into a local religious school that's not their faith. And they say, boy, I want my kid to have a better education, but do I have to swear to a faith that doesn't abide with my beliefs? And so I think these are real problems for Florida families, and I think the solution is to put resources back into our public schools.
Well, the merits of increasing the voucher program and the criticism that it's taking money away from public education.
Well, I don't want Florida to go back. When I went to Manatee High School, I call it the zip code days. You had to go to school where your zip code was. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair if you're in a failing area of town that you are predestined to have to go to that school. I want to put power back into parents and children, not administrators, not Tallahassee bureaucrats. So I think we've made some great progress. Should there be more transparency? Absolutely, absolutely. I would be in total favor of more transparency for these other education options. But I don't want us to go back on. I want us to keep going forward.
All right, we have to take another quick break. We are just getting warmed up on our debate for House District 71. It will continue right after this. Welcome back to the House 71 debate. We are joined by Republican Will Robertson and Democrat Tracy Pratt. As we all know, with the elevation of Justice Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court, the balance has shifted there, and it does open the possibility that should a case come up through the legal system, that the Supreme Court could theoretically overturn Roe versus Wade and leave it to every individual state to make its own law in terms of whether or not abortion rights are legal or not legal. One of you might be put into that position in the Florida legislature. So, Will, starting with you, if that came up in terms of continuing to keep abortion legal in Florida or not, how would you vote?
Well, I'm a pro-life candidate, and I'll be a pro-life legislator. Both Kavanaugh and Gorsuch have said Roe is settled law. And also in our state constitution, there's a privacy right. So we have some additional layers in our state constitution that others would not have. I'll address certain bills regarding this topic when they come in front of me, but I think it's settled law, and I think at least 2 Supreme Court justices have said so.
Tracy?
Well, I am definitely a pro-choice candidate. I just don't believe anybody should have a right to determine decisions made between myself or any woman and a healthcare provider. I think that's a private decision. And I believe that women should have access to reproductive health care. It's something that I will fight for. I've been endorsed by the Planned Parenthood PAC, and I will tell you, I went 10 years without health insurance, and Planned Parenthood provided me with the primary care that I needed. And so I will staunchly make sure that women have access to reproductive health care, and that a right to make a choice, a decision, is ours and doesn't belong to the government.
Okay. You brought up the issue of health care. One of the public health issues that has really been at the center of the Florida legislature is whether or not to expand Medicaid under the provisions of the Affordable Care Act. Florida has not done so, and there's been a lot of criticism by Republicans in terms of spending that kind of money. What would you, if you were in the Florida legislature, vote to accept the federal money to expand Medicaid?
Absolutely. I'm married to a family doctor who's worked in community health for decades now, and we know that we can do better. We are the richest country in the history of the world, and yet our citizens don't have health care. Taking that Medicaid expansion will give 800,000 Floridians access to health care that they don't have right now, and that is money that we have paid into the federal government already. I don't think that hoping and praying they're eventually going to get a good job so that they can have private insurance is a good enough solution to those who today are living without health care.
No, I think it's important. I think it's important that we, first of all, not accept the Medicaid expansion, because I want to keep us moving forward, our economy moving forward, creating jobs, getting people off government insurance and on private insurance. And we don't know how much the federal government's going to match. It could be 90%, 95%, 85%. That could cost the taxpayer billions of dollars. I'd be curious to know where that money's going to come from. So it's going to cost our taxpayer something. I want to get folks off Medicaid, get them great private insurance, get them quality, affordable access to health care, and not increase a federal entitlement.
Let me ask you about that private insurance that you're talking about there, and this came up in the congressional debate that we had last week. For people who are lucky enough to have private employer-based insurance, premiums and out-of-pocket costs continue to go up. So the question is, well, how do you bring down the cost of health care, because private insurance through your employer is actually getting more expensive to more and more middle-income families.
No doubt about it. I mean, Obamacare has been a failure. Right now,
I'm not talking about Obamacare, I'm talking about private insurance.
Well, right now, because of Obamacare, 47 of our 67 counties in Florida have one health care provider. There is no competition. And I am all in favor, and one of the things that I would like to see in our legislature and pass is transparency. Transparency in prescription drugs. Transparency in how much health care costs. When you go to the hospital or you go to the doctor's office, Does anyone really know how much a specific healthcare option costs? I think transparency would help lower costs for private insurance. But right now we have no options out there. That's what's killing the market. There are no private healthcare options for consumers right now.
Tracy.
Well, I disagree. I think the Affordable Care Act brought insurance, it brought health care to a lot of people who didn't have it. And like I said, as somebody who lived without health care, I know what an urgent situation that can be. And I meet people all the time knocking on doors who have lost their health insurance, or people who tell me that if we had the Medicaid expansion, that it would be accessible to them in this community. You know, like I said, my husband taught community health at Tulane University. We know we can do better, and we know that it will cost less money. The truth is that people who don't have health insurance, they go to the emergency room and they get substandard treatment because there's no follow-up, there's no preventive care, and that costs taxpayer dollars, and it costs lives, and it costs health. The reality is we need to be able to provide our citizens with health care.
I know both of you talk about a lot of different issues on the campaign trail, but I'm going to ask you a question I've been asking a lot of the candidates. Tracy, if there was one issue that you would go to Tallahassee, a bill that you would sponsor, an issue you care about more than any others that you want voters to know about, what would that be?
It is the environment. The environment is my #1 priority. My children are 5th generation Manatee County residents, and I want to make sure that we have a healthy environment, clean water, clean air, that we have resiliency against sea level rise and climate change for my children's grandchildren and their grandchildren. So that is my #1 priority, Alan.
Well,
A focus on workforce development in our trade colleges and technical colleges. We have award-winning technical colleges in our area. I've toured probably 200 small businesses in Bradenton and Sarasota, and all the employers say the same thing. We can't find good quality educated workers to fill job slots. And we have great institutions right here, but I don't think we're focusing on trade schools. I don't think we're funding trade schools, and I think we can do a much better job at the state level doing that.
okay. One other issue that we want to get to in this segment, and that is red tide. It has devastated the Suncoast from down south to Manatee County, even up to Pinellas County. There's been a lot of talk, Will, in terms of maybe adding money to Mote Marine so they could investigate and research the causes. We know it's a naturally occurring phenomenon, but there is increased suspicion that what we're doing, nutrients getting into the water system, is exacerbating it. Aside from what we have heard about in the news in terms of just giving more money to Mote Marine for research, what would you do?
Well, you used the right word, devastating. It's been devastating. I've toured Cortez and talked to fishermen. I've been on Anna Maria Island talking to hotel owners and residents. It's been absolutely devastating. I remember a terrible red tide incident we had in 2005. So just because it's naturally occurring is not an excuse to me. And funding is one piece, but it's not only funding. I've talked about punishing those polluters and putting maybe some teeth in some regulations, and maybe the fines for those polluters can go to that funding. And frankly, what can we do as individuals? I was giving a speech overlooking Bird Key, and that was a subdivision developed before drainage requirements. What can we do individually as homeowners to make sure our carbon footprint or our green footprint, and we're doing the best thing possible? So I think we can do better education from a state level to make sure people know what they can and shouldn't do to help our environment. So we all take responsibility.
Tracy, same question to you.
Well, I think there's certainly a lot more that we can be doing. I mean, in the last 8 years under Governor Scott, we have deeply deregulated our environmental standards. And, you know, what we're seeing is a lot more than nutrient, the toxic runoff through the septic tanks and through fertilizers and also through corporate polluters. And so I think we need to address that issue. The Republicans, I think, have been really backed away from regulations, but the truth is we can't punish the polluters unless we have those regulations in place. I think we should also reinstate the harmful toxic algae task force, which is science-based monitoring and notification. And also, I think we really could become a gem of scientific inquiry right here. We have Mote Marine already, yet USF has their scientists in trailers behind the facility. So I think we could build a facility, we can make this a gem of the coast on scientific research.
I want to ask a follow-up question to Will, because you know, from the president and the Trump administration and the Congress right on down, we're talking about eliminating a lot of the regulations here. So assuming that the Republicans retain control of the floor of the House, do you think you could get your Republican colleagues to add additional regulations to environmental laws to crack down on companies that are polluting?
Well, the great thing about leadership is you have to show your colleagues that this is important. This is an issue that's not only impacting the West Coast. I've talked to some of my potential colleagues up in Pinellas and down in Fort Myers, and it's even hitting the East Coast. So it's about showing leadership with your colleagues. You're right, there's 120 House members, so you have to find folks that support you. So I think this is something that is impacting a lot of Floridians all around the state. So it just requires me to show good leadership with my colleagues that it's an important issue, not only for Braden and Sarasota, but also for Vero Beach and Miami.
And Tracy, the question to you is that adding regulations may be a tough go if the Florida House continues to be in Republican hands. So you may say you want to see additional regulations. How would you necessarily get it through unless there are people like Will who are willing to look at that?
Well, again, I think it does take leadership and working across the aisle. You know, I believe it's important to have a lot of different viewpoints. I've been knocking on doors of Republicans and third-party individuals. I've been hosting town halls and inviting everyone in the community to come out and talk about these issues so that we can bring a variety of ideas. And as an attorney, of course, I have to work across the aisle, and I'm diplomatic because I think that's tremendously important to actually get work done. But I would like to point out in the past, Will, you've said that you weren't willing to regulate big polluters. So I really hope that you have changed your mind on that. You know, I have chosen not to take any contributions from corporate polluters, and I know that you have taken maximum donations from Big Sugar, which we see are contributing to the algae levels in Lake Okeechobee.
Well, I don't know what statement you're referring to, but Alan, my first check in this campaign was from a Democrat. And I got some heat on the right from taking a check from a Democrat. Frankly, two of members of Tracy's family have given me a check. And I said to them and the Democrat and anyone who gives me a check the same thing. You're endorsing me and my philosophies of moving Florida forward and making sure our community is put first, not the other way around.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back for the last round of questions coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to the House 71 debate. We are joined by Republican Will Robertson and Democrat Tracy Pratt. One other issue I wanted to get to, because obviously voters in Florida have voted to make medical marijuana legal in Florida, but there's already discussion about whether or not it should be legal for recreational use. There are other states that are doing that right now. Tracy, would you be supportive of that or not?
Well, first of all, I think Floridians made the right decision when they voted for medical marijuana. I think the legislature's been dragging its heels on giving people access, particularly veterans who are suffering from PTSD. They come and talk to me, and this is a real issue for them. I believe that the state should absolutely decriminalize marijuana. Right now, 40 to 45% of our inmates are in there for nonviolent drug offenses. And I think we need to stop incarcerating people for marijuana use. As far as recreational use goes, I think like medical marijuana, we should take that as a referendum to the people.
Will?
I first want us to focus on medical marijuana. I agree with Tracy that we need to be doing a better job of implementing that. I've heard a lot about that from voters. They want to have it fully implemented. The voters voted on it, so let's do it. I'm not there with recreational. I don't believe we need it. Frankly, both of our sheriffs in District 71 are opposed to it. I've been endorsed by both of our sheriffs. So to me, I don't believe we need recreational marijuana. I want to focus on the medical marijuana first.
While we have time here, I want to ask you one last question in terms of the political climate that we are living in right now. People are frankly scared, and they're wondering where this is going to go. You know, Tallahassee is a tough place up there, Will. Are you concerned about the way that Democrats and Republicans are debating the issues right now and each other and the impact it's having on our society and community?
Well, I think we have an obligation to tone the temperature down a bit. I think we've had a very civil debate tonight. I think there's nothing wrong with a good debate on issues. It's when you start getting personal and attacking someone else, that's a problem.
Tracy?
I have to say I agree, and I feel I've been out knocking on doors, and like I said, I talked to Republicans, I talked to independents, I talked to Democrats, and I feel like it has been an obligation to try and bring people together. There has been so much division in the last couple of years, and I know that people are ready to come back to Thanksgiving dinner tables and back to the water cooler at work and feel like we have a better sense of community. So I think it's really important, you know, for for people to have integrity and remember that we are all Americans and on the same team.
Very good. We'll have closing statements by the candidates in a moment. Welcome back. It's already time for closing statements, and Will, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, and thank you, Tracy, for a great and spirited debate, and thank you to the viewers. I started off tonight talking about why I was running, and that was to keep Florida moving forward. And we have two stark, different visions for Florida. My opponent's vision, which is more taxes, more increased regulation, more government control of your health care, that's going to move Florida backwards. I want to keep Florida moving forward, whether it's in workforce development, or stopping the opioid epidemic, or allowing you as the taxpayer to have more control over your money, your hard-earned money, than government. We have a critical election coming up in a couple days, and I humbly ask for your vote. May God bless you and your families.
Tracy.
Once again, I'm Tracy Pratt, and I am so excited that we are going to be making a decision in this community in just 1 week. I believe that you deserve good public schools, access to health care, clean water, clean air, resilient beaches. And I believe that everyone deserves to be safe from gun violence in their communities. I would be very honored to have your vote.
All right. Well, we want to thank you both, and we want to wish you both the best of luck and safe trails on the campaign trail in the final week of this campaign. It's very exciting. You both did terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We want to thank both candidates, Republican Will Robertson and Democrat Tracy Pratt, and that is all the time we have for this evening. I'm Alan Cohn. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night, and please don't forget to vote.
Exactly.